Hi everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel called Caroline's Knits. I have been planning to film this video for ages and I filmed this video last year. I thought it would be brilliant to film it once again to sort of talk through what this year has brought me knitting wise and to show you everything that I've made. But I'm not going to lie, the start of 2022 just hasn't for some reason lent me the opportunity to do this. So it is a Friday night. You might, in between me talking, be able to hear Ben downstairs who's playing PlayStation with his mates. The light is a bit funky because I've just done the best with the light I own, and it does mean I know the colours won't be completely true to life, but all of these I have shown in the podcast throughout the previous year, and I sort of feel like it's less maybe about the garment and more talking about the journey and what I learned from every single one and kind of reflecting on the past year. So if this is shite, you may never see it, but if it's all right, you will. I should also say it is the first Friday after I've returned to work, so I have poured myself a glass of wine, had a few sips of that, and I might have some throughout this video just to keep myself going. But I came up here, was about to just crawl into bed and knit, and then I was like, you know what, it's time to get this video filmed because I just really want to put this video out. I think actually it was such a great video last year. It was so interesting to see what I made and sort of reflecting on it. So if you're curious about that one, I'll link it down below. I should probably do my usual intro in case this is the first time you join me. So my name is Caroline and I live in Scotland with my partner Ben and my now 7-month-old puppy Fela. She's currently asleep downstairs, or at least she was when I got off from the sofa downstairs. So hopefully she'll just keep cuddling Ben when he's playing PlayStation, but maybe we'll be joined by her later. I started knitting in May 2020, so yeah, this year was the first year I'd knitted for like a full year, so there's a lot more projects this year. Gonna have a sip of wine. I know that I will forget what I've made this year. I won't have everything here like to show you. This is obviously all garments that's in this massive pile, but I've pulled out my iPad. I've kept track of all of them, so I put them in an order, so I feel like we should just start from the beginning and get going. So the very first thing I finished in 2021, I actually began in 2020. It was very much a knit that I started over Christmas. I should say that because I want you to see the actual true wear and tear of the project, like of the projects that I've made in the past year, I have not depilled or done any of those kind of bits before doing this video, and this is probably one of those garments that, especially down here along the arm, as you can tell, it is probably about time. But I just thought I'd want to sort of show it as part of like, this is what the knits would actually look like if I'd worn them today and not if I'd neatly tidied them up for this video. So this was my very first finished object of 2021. It is cardigan number 7 by My Favourite Things Knitwear, and I knit this in one strand of Sandnes coarse, and I held it with Camera and Rånestråle, and this is a size 2XL knitted to XL length, and I finished this in January. This project is a very beginner friendly cardigan. It's like the beginner version of a cardigan. You do some nice raglan before you split for sleeves. You know, the sleeves are balloon sleeves, so they're just knitted in one go. You can just use normal bind off for this when you pick up stitches. So in general, it's, in my eyes at least, this is very beginner friendly. If you do want to knit a cardigan, it's knit on, it has 14 stitches to 10 centimeters, so it's around that 7mm needle mark, so also fairly quick. So I don't remember this being particularly challenging, besides the fact that this was the first time I really noticed a difference between my working flat gauge and my knitting in the round gauge. So essentially it means that I purl looser than I knit. So when I knit flat, and you will see another example of that in a minute, I do get like a bit of like a stripy appearance. So you can probably see that like here. Usually the line is fairly obvious, especially on the body, that you almost have like, because the course is like a melange type colour, that you do get a bit of like almost lines through it when it's work flat instead of when it's work round. On top of that, when I picked a size for this, so in the past, when I knit many of these garments, I was probably maybe not a full 10 centimetre big around the bust, but maybe not far off, and in that time I've lost some weight, to the point I'm probably around 110 centimetre around the bust now, and that means that I would probably no longer fall in the 2XL category, and that was very much, this was one of those garments that made me realise that even if I was to gain 10 centimetres back around the bust, I would probably still like knit, I'd probably still knit sizes down, because obviously it's not really a garment that you close loads, is it? But I don't know if you can tell, but I do think there's a lot of room in here, and probably unnecessarily so, and I would probably just knit an XL or even just a large, if I'm honest, just because I don't think it needs this much positive ease, because you have the big balloon sleeves. The original sleeves are like bracelet length, but because I have quite long arms, I have like a dislike of short sleeves, because most commercial sleeves are too short on me. What else is there to say about it? So I'm just about to change the buttons for a third time, because it's actually lost a button because I stepped on these and broke one. So I've just bought some like tortoiseshell type buttons from Simona from Knit, so that will be changed shortly. At first I bought these beautiful like glittery buttons, but I spoke about it on the podcast, but when I put those on, they were like just really wonky and they were way too heavy, so like this like flapped weirdly and it sat really weird. So it wasn't until I just had these in my stash, these buttons, and I just changed them, that I'm used to cardigan a lot more. It's such a, grey is such a neutral colour, so I wore it especially in summertime when sometimes you just need an extra layer and stuff. I also wear it quite frequently in the home office. I often wear these kind of long sleeved cardigans in my collection on top of like long sleeve on the like shirts underneath, so that I can stay nice and warm, because I'm always cold when I'm working. So that's also why you see some pilling, but I think compared to many of my other garments, considering the amount of use and abuse this have had, it's really held up well. So I could definitely see myself knit another one of these, but probably a slightly different yarn, because I do think, of course, I didn't enjoy knitting as much, and I don't think it spun as evenly as, for example, Camel Rose Sniff Nook. So if I was to knit it again, that's what I would use. So that was garment number 1 for 2021. The second garment, I'll have to pop in a picture because I no longer have it. It was a gift. It was Selma's Soldracht, or Selma's Sleepsuit from TESTKNIT, one of the few TESTKNIT patterns that I've knit this year. And I knitted it for some of our friends who had a little baby girl, and I knitted it in Drops Merino Extra Fine, which is a superwash on, so that they could easily wash it. The good thing about superwash when it's a children's garment is also that's quite easy to like stretch and stuff, and it's not itchy. So I finished that in February. I finished that cardigan in January. And well, the thing was, I'd knitted one sleepsuit before, and while it's an enjoyable pattern, it is quite a big project for some, at least it is for me. I found it big, but I don't do a lot of gift knitting, so I guess there's that. So yeah, that took me some time to get finished, and I was so happy when I could finally send that off. And I know it's been used loads. So that was sort of the start of the year. And these two projects, we started 2021 being in a lockdown in the UK, and I feel like last Christmas for me was really rough. I found it really hard to obviously not see my family, to not be able to go home, and not being able to leave the house. And those two projects, I actually started on like early December in 2020, and in December 2020, I also did my first test knit, which you will be able to see in last year's video, and I feel like 2021 we're now hitting a phase where I started doing a lot more test knits, and I haven't counted how many I've done this year, but I think I'm on 4 or 5 this year, which I think for sweater size projects is quite a lot. And I actually also received my first sponsored yarn. So that's not the next finished object, but it's just to say that we're going to start hitting some places where I'll say gifted, because I was gifted the yarn for test knitting. But the test knit that I did receive the yarn for was just really rough on my wrist. It was a hard project to knit on soily, especially at the time. So I needed something to kind of break that up a little bit, to keep it all going. So I finished this in March, because in March I actually finished 3 projects. So it's worth seeing that, like, as I've obviously said, that in January I finished the cardigan and I finished the sleepsuit in February, but then it's because I was working on these 3 projects and then I managed to finish 3 in 1 month. So I'm just going to pop this on. So my next big project finish is another petite knit, and this might actually, yeah, this is the last petite knit that I knitted in 2020. This is the Wednesday sweater, and I knitted this in the size XL. I used Lana Gatto Maxi VIP that I bought from Knit. She no longer sells it, and then I used 1 strand of hand-dyed Suri alpaca silk from Zakami. It was my first time using a Suri alpaca silk base, which is like a replacement for Mohair really, and I absolutely love it. This sweater was honestly a sweater where I feel like the end product isn't perfect, but I thoroughly enjoyed knitting it. I just loved knitting it. The yarn was beautiful. This is quite an unusual fit for me. I wouldn't say I'm usually attracted to this kind of like really long sleeves and like, you know, really, really drop shoulders. Like this is literally where my elbow is, and that's how far out, you know, the arm goes. And I feel like this has gone a bit floppy. I should probably have gone down a needle size for the ribbing, and the same for the body. There is like, you can really see the tension difference between where, I'll come up closer, but you can really see the tension difference from up here where I worked flat and to where I joined in the round. It's the first time I did the Italian tabular bind off, so it's not, that maybe wasn't done so well. However, this sweater, I not only enjoyed knitting, but I have also worn this loads. It is just a kind of sweater that if I roll out of bed in the morning and I don't know what to wear while sitting in the home office and it's cold, this is what I put on. I love the long sleeves. The roll neck is a roll neck without being like a really tight one. So sometimes I also wear it like this, because I ever so slightly shortened the neck, because I don't think I have that long a neck and I didn't want like my double chin being stuck on top of a roll neck. So yeah, I've worn this loads. You can really see it, how much has been worn sat like this at my desk, because it's almost like it's discolouring a little bit here. It's probably due like, you know, a wash and a depil and all of this. So after I film this video, I feel like I can start to do some of these things. But considering this is a beige yarn, there are some stains I probably have to deal with as well. Basically, this is a very well-loved sweater. I don't necessarily think I'd knit another Wednesday sweater, but I think if you are sort of like, you've done your first fully in the round kind of sweaters and you're ready for a bit of a different construction, I think from memory, this is just, you work the front and back separately, and then you join in the round and knit that, and then you pick up for the neckline and for the sleeves. And I think in that way it's quite a good sweater, because it has like quite a few techniques to practice, like being good at picking up sleeves is so important, but it's not really hard. Again, knitting slightly thicker yarn. Maxi VIP is one of my favourite yarns, so I'm sad that someone no longer sells it, because this, you know, this yarn combo, I'm surprised hasn't pilled more, and I will talk about sort of a similar combo that has pilled loads. But for me, this is a 10 out of 10 on the softness factor. when my eczema really flares up. There's lots of my knits I can't wear, especially straight after a shower, but this I can wear literally with nothing underneath, touching all the bare skin. So yes, really enjoyed this one, and I think that's all there is to say about this. So the next project I finished was a TESTKNIT for knitting for Olive. I will fully admit that I probably received the pattern in, I don't know, I wanted to start knitting it while still on my Christmas holidays, and it didn't work out that way, because it took time to receive the yarn, and then it took time to receive the pattern, and I knew this project was going to be a big undertaking, but I didn't receive it then. This is the Darling wrap from Knitting for Olive, which was a TESTKNIT with gifted yarn, and I test knitted this in, just looking for where the hole is, I test knitted this in one strand of the Merino and one strand of the soft silk Mohair, in the colour Plum Rose, both of these as far as I remember, and I've knitted this in a size 2XL. This was for their book, and I know that the ever so slightly has finished the fit, because if I tie it like it's meant to be tied like this. Now keep in mind, I am probably no longer true size 2XL, so it should fit a little bit wrong on me, I guess, considering it's quite a fitted garment, but I don't know if you can tell what the problem is, but the length of this, it's knitted bottom up, the length is just too long for this style, because you can't get it tight enough that you get a true tight fit all around. You might be able to see, and so this is actually not how I tie it. I fed that back, that I thought that the length on the body added too much length compared to how it looked in the smaller sizes. So as far as I know, they retested it. I have never received the final pattern, so I don't actually know what changes ended up being made, but if I do have to wear it now, I prefer to wrap it without sticking it through that hole, because then I can get it really tight this way, and then I can wrap that over on top like so, and then you can tie that quite tight like so. And personally, I just think this is a considerably neater fit on me, so just making sure it's all, I'm just going to double check in the mirror that yeah, I've tied it right. Yeah, so I think personally like this, tied like this, it looks much nicer on me, and the fit is much better, and it looks much better having that bow in the front and sitting in the waist, so you look slim. This was my first ever sponsored yarn TESTKNIT, and this was a really big piece of work. I think when I accepted it, I didn't know what I had to do for the pattern, and when I actually read through the pattern, I realised that it was probably slightly above my technical skills at the time. First of all, knitting a whole garment on needle size 4.5 into 2 knit 2 purl ribbing, when you've never knit a fingering weight sweater really. I've never knit one of that finer gauge. Knitting follows merino is really, in that sort of fingering weight category, fingering and lace weight held together, so sort of DK. And it was such a big piece of work, and I have to be honest and say I did get stuck, which is why I knitted the Wednesday sweater. I think I've had to learn the hard way this year, well, not learn the hard way, but that I've come to realise this year, is that the thing is, when you get sponsored yarn, you somehow, I feel like it's easier to just pick the colour that you're attracted to than to maybe think through exactly what colours you really wear and use. And so this plum rose colour is nice, but I think I would wear this so much more had I knitted it in a true neutral, like a beige or even a black. I know one of the other testers knitted a black, and I wish I'd gone for that kind of combo, because I just think I would get so much more use out of it than I have done in this plum rose colour. It's not to say this colour isn't really pretty, but I think what really surprised me when it arrived is that the silk mohair's thread is like almost golden, and it's quite obvious that there's a second strand in it. So yeah, it was such a big piece of work, and looking back I just kind of wish that I had picked a different colour, because I think I would have had so much more use out of it. But I'm very proud of the technical accomplishment of knitting this, and I feel like if the fit was slightly better, I would also be happier with it. This was my first time using knitting for olives on yarn, and I was really impressed. I found it quite tough to knit with. Knitting for olives merino isn't, at least to me, a very soft merino when you very first knit it up, but I find it gets softer with wear actually, that it really it gets more smooth. It can almost feel a bit rough on your finger. Knitting for olives mohair is not as soft as Isa's silk mohair, but to me it is like out and about. It's soft enough for like a strappy top like I'm wearing now, but if I'm sat in the house I would probably wear at least a t-shirt underneath. But funnily enough, I just haven't gotten as much wear out of it, and I think it's because, at least to me, I feel like there's quite a lot of bulk being created around my midsection, and I think I can feel a bit self-conscious about that. I'd love to find a dress this year where you could really wear this on top. I think I'd get a lot of use out of it if I had like a flowery dress or something to wear underneath. So that was my fourth finished object for 2021, and this is also the worst one to fold up, so it usually just gets like kind of quickly folded. Oh, and for wear and tear, this is another one I haven't really detailed. So you can see this is the armpit area, and there are some of these like bigger pills, but I don't think it's that bad. But then I would probably say these, you know, this sweater is probably one of the sweaters I've worn the least this year. My next finished object is this. So I'm just going to double check, because there's one side where the ribbing went kind of funny, and I often like to say that's the back, even though this one didn't have any short shaping in it, so not as easy to distinguish. So this is my chunky Dahlia by Lena swimsuit, and I also finished this in March. I knitted it in Sandermann's MOME Chunky, which is, I should say, it's a Merino and Mohair blend. So one of the slightly more softer yarns. I've spoken about Sandermann loads around the time I got this yarn, so I will spare you all the yarn chat. But it's quite a natural yarn, meaning that to this day there's probably still a bit of leftover sheep belongings like dirt, and I found hay and that kind of thing in the yarn. I knitted this in a size 2XL, and together with sweater, so for the Wednesday sweater I did size down. Then I knitted the Darling wrap, which wasn't the best size for me, right? And then I knitted the Wednesday sweater, where I did actually at the time size down one size based on the recommended positive ease. And if there's one thing I could do over, it's to have knitted this a size down, because if you look here on the side, I don't know if you can tell, but like there's so much excess fabric, and this is why I keep harping on about sizes and why I speak really honestly about my own measurements, because yeah, I think even up around my bust, 15 centimeters around my bust area, you know, is easily like an extra 20 centimeters around my waist, and I just think it ends up having a bit more of a frumpy look. And I think, if I'm honest, that's also why this is one of those garments that I haven't actually worn that much, because it kind of flares a bit at the back because there's so much extra fabric. That being said, it was a really enjoyable knit to make. So this was my first lace chart, and I was really intimidated by lace charts. I think lots of knitters are, and this was fairly straightforward. And once, you know, I spent a weekend knitting the top half, and then as soon as you're through that, it's just, you know, classic stockinette and two together for the ribbing. These are also some Merino balloon sleeves, and I have checked, I do actually meet gauge on this, because I wanted to check if that was the needle size I make gauge on in this yarn, and I did still meet the gauge, so I can't really believe how big it kind of looks. So yeah, it's a shame because this yarn was so special, and I don't know if I'd ever really rip it back. I'm not much one for completely ripping out knitted projects, but I don't know about this. Another thing to consider is that because it's such a light yarn and this pattern goes like so far down, you have to really think about, or because it has like these yarn overs, you do have to think a little bit about what you wear underneath. But I might put this out in my rotation again, because I do actually think it'd be brilliant for home office because it's nice and loose, and it is very warm. Even standing in here right now, I get quite warm wearing it. And that leads me to the yarn, which is slight itch factor with this. Mohair is not my favourite, and yeah. So I feel like at this point there hasn't been, you know, we're now through four full-size garments, and you know, 50% I have worn loads, which I don't feel like is great. So, but anyway, when I knitted the chunky Dahlia, I was in no way, shape or form done knitting lace. I thoroughly enjoyed it, so much so that when Lena Samsu came out with the Peacock Sweater, I was probably one of the first people to buy the pattern and knit it, because I'm fairly certain I started knitting it before she even had the English translation out. So I'm going to put that on. That's my sixth finished garment. So this I knitted in a size XL. I finished this in May, so I didn't finish anything in April. And that was probably because we were preparing for the move, because in May we moved into this house. Yes, I knitted it in Lana, Gatto, Claret, and in the Suri alpaca silk. Like the Suri alpaca silk is hand dyed by Zakami, the same as I used in the Wednesday sweater. I hope the contrast between what I look like in the chunky Dahlia and this is obvious. I knit this a size down because the sizing is really similar between the two. Once you've done like the lace part, the rest of the construction is exactly the same. But I made a few changes to this just to, I guess, sort of fit it into my style a little bit more. Of course, like the chunky Dahlia, I haven't shown you that very much, but there are, you know, there's lace all the way around, no short rows in this. So one change that I made was that I made all the rib twisted. I just think, especially on these bigger needle sizes, it gives a much neater look. Yes, and then I knitted it obviously a size smaller than the pattern recommended for positive ease. And if I was to knit another one or another chunky Dahlia, I think this is the perfect amount of positive ease. Like, it's still relaxed enough that it's not like, I don't think with this kind of lace I don't think you'd want it too tight. And you know, when I've worn it, sometimes I've tucked it in, which is quite nice. Maybe not when you've had lots of food like I've had today. However, I've knitted in the Suri alpaca silk before, and obviously haven't had much playing with that. Lana Gatto Class is a mixture of, I think it's merino and camel meat. No, it's not camel. It's Angora. It's rabbit. This peels so much. Like, I don't know if you can even tell the amount of pilling. Like when I've worn something underneath, and you'll probably see it now, when I've worn anything underneath this, it's like the fibres have stuck to it. If I worn it in the you know, and I've sat in the car, the whole car is orange. Like, this is my most like pilly and like shedding sweater. And that has actually really put me off wearing it, because it just peels so extremely like so much that it's just no way to contain it. And I think that's a really big shame, because this is another next to skin soft yarn for me, and I really wanted to love Lana Gatto class because it's similar to Maxi VIP sort of gauge wise, but I don't because of the reason that this amount of pilling is too much. This is another project that I might actually re-wash, like de-pill and maybe like re-wash or pop it in the freezer. We just have such a tiny freezer, I don't think I could fit a whole sweater in it. Yeah, just to like get a little bit under control, because it's a shame, because I love the lace pattern. If you're looking for levels of difficulty, the Peacock Sweater was considerably easier to knit actually than to Chunky Dahlia, because there's several rounds in the lace work where you don't do anything, so much easier to keep track of. I could tell I could use very little yarn for this, and I have the exact amount I used on Ravelry if you're curious, but it was very, very little, and I have essentially a whole project's worth left in this yarn, but I haven't decided what to make with it, mainly because it sheds so much. I actually think I could make quite good hats, because that's less of a concern with hats, isn't it? So that took me through to May. And as I said, in May, we moved, oh wow, like this pilling. This is where my bag has like rubbed it. Like you can actually see when I've worn it where my bag have been, because it rubs it so much. Anyway, so as I said, in May is when we moved into our current house. And while I obviously did knit, I'm gonna have a sip of wine while we talk through this part. Well, I did obviously knit when we moved. I feel like life started to pick up again a little bit. So I feel like some of these knits, I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but sometimes knits are tainted a little bit by the phase of life you're in. And I feel like at the start of last year, I was really struggling. That's my puppy. And yeah, it wasn't until like we started moving into the house that it got easier. Should we let her in? Should we see? Are you coming in to say hello? Good girl. Good girl. You have to lie down though. Listen, right on top of all the knitwear, why don't you? Yeah, why don't you? So with that slight interlude, when we moved into this house, one of the first days here, I actually received yarn for this. So this was gifted as well. And it is my next test knit. So we're now on the second test knit of the year. I actually wore this in a fairly recent podcast. And in that podcast, I said I didn't think I'd actually ever worn it in an actual podcast, like when it was very first finished, because I always like to wear like a latest finished whip if there is one, but I did at the time that this was finished. This was a test knit for Augustines. So it's the Augustines number 17. Fluff. It was knitted in one strand of knitting for Olive's double soft merino and one strand of their Mohair. I can't remember the exact colour codes, but they're obviously like pink ones. And I knitted this in a size F, and I finished it in June. It's knitted top down, and you have this like, I don't know what it's called, but essentially you only increase for the sleeves and you do a saddle shoulder, and once you finish that you only increase for the sleeves, which was something I'd not done before, but I quite liked because it was quite an easy construction. And yeah, what else is there to say about it? My feedback at the time, well, I can see it now. The biggest piece of feedback that I had was that I thought it was too long. And actually I think this would be one that would be quite easy for me to actually just rip back. And I think if it was probably about this length, do we think that? About that length, like high-waisted length, I think it would be much nicer. And to be honest, I would be tempted just to add ribbing. This has a double folded hem. But I think in this fabric, it's really nice on the like puffy sleeves. But I'm not sure it's so nice on the body. And actually I have a picture before I put in the elastic for the sleeves, and I quite liked it loose. So this might actually go in the list of like projects to change, especially because this has not seen all that much wear for some reason. I think this is similar to the knitting for Olive like wrap cardigan. One reason is I picked the wrong colour. So I picked a complete neutral for this, so I could have worn it tucked into skirts instead of this pinkish colour. This pinkish colour is really beautiful. It's not my colour at all. I always think that these kind of like dusty rosy tones can clash quite a lot with my hair. So yeah, this is probably on the list to finish, but the construction was easy enough, and if this is up your street, it was a great knit. Quite easy. This took me a week to knit, and considering it's such a big garment, I think a week is quite good, especially if you're starting to plan Christmas knits as well. So I finished that in June, but at the time there was a project that I had been working on for considerably longer. This one actually has all the places where I've folded it still stuck into it. And this one had a hard birth because I made many mistakes in this. So I probably cast this on. I definitely cast it on before we moved. So probably around April time. And this I finished in June, and quite late in June, because I remember taking photos of the newly finished knit on my birthday, which is end of June. So this is the office sweater that I test knitted for Knit Flitter. I test knitted it because she added one more size, which is what I knitted, which was size what accounts to 2XL, and I knitted it in Isa Alpaca 1 and 2, a yarn combo I really enjoyed. This I have also, I would say, is one of my more worn knits this year. I don't know if you can tell, but I was very good and picked actually just a neutral, and this dark grey is the perfect neutral in my wardrobe. Fits with lots of things on top of it. Yeah, and it's pilled minimally. It is beautifully fluffy. It has just the right kind of fluffy look, I think. Right now it's a bit itchy, but I think it's taking stuff on and off. I wouldn't say it is a particularly itchy garment, and I have test knitted for Knit Flitter again. This has quite difficult construction, I would say. This is definitely not for beginners, and if you're intermediate, I would say it's one you have to read the pattern properly several times. You cast on and join in the round, but it essentially has quite a specific, special construction, in that it has first almost a saddle shoulder. So you start with like a saddle shoulder construction, and then you move into a raglan. So when you're doing your short rows, sorry, have you been neglected today? Have you been neglected today? Is that why you decided to join us unasked with your presents? You should tell everyone, what did we do today? Did we try out a new daycare? And it was good, wasn't it? Really liked it. Anyway, so when you do short rows, you have to keep track of different frequencies towards the front and the sleeves, and I messed that up, and then I had the gauge wrong. So in total I knitted this first part 3 times, which with 22 stitches to 10 centimeters was a lot of work. I however would say generally I'm a sucker for big balloon sleeves, like on the Peacock and the chunky Dahlia, that kind of like big beautiful balloon sleeves I really love. However, this has a very nicely and tight fitting sleeve, which I really like, really like. Yeah, I would totally knit this again if I was to knit another basic sweater and then knit it in a yarn combo and everything. Yeah, this is definitely on the good knit list. And actually, Favour. Next one is another Knit Flitter sweater that I also test knitted for her in size F, which is a 2XL. The yarn was sponsored for this. This is the Day Off sweater, which is a completely different sort of garment to the office sweater, in the sense that here we have lots of positive ease, we have a nice loose relaxed neckline, we have really long sleeves with thumb holes, which I actually really love. Often if I get annoyed at them, I fold them up, and I haven't trimmed my ends very short, so you see all my woven in ends, but who cares? So yes, this was again sponsored yarn, and I knit this, the yarn was kindly sponsored by Lang Yarns Nordic that Nina then sent over to me. So this was in Carpe Diem, and which is like I think it's a Merino alpaca blend, which is lovely and soft, really like that. And Suri alpaca, which is gauge wise similar to 2 strands of Mohair, which I think Nina's own version used 2 strands of camel wool and Nordstrom, which is a Mohair replacement. And yeah, I finished this in July. Once I really got, oh yeah, I should also say, I don't know if you can tell, but it has like short rows in the back so that it covers your bum. I finished this in July on holiday, literally 2 days before we picked up this little rascal that's been interrupting all my videos ever since. This is, again, for me, next to Skin Soft. As you might be able to tell, I never experienced itch with alpaca. I know some people don't get on with alpaca. The Isa alpaca 1 and 2 is obviously alpaca as well. And so far I haven't yet I haven't yet tried an alpaca mix I didn't like. However, this has quite significant pilling here. This is another one that, as you can tell, could probably benefit from a bit of a clean up here in the sleeves. And I also do get it a little bit, so when I always wear it over the shoulder bag, and yes, you get pilling there as well. But this has been a really comfy home office sweater as well, and really casual. I love this like greenish colour. Could I go back, I would have knitted it in a neutral. Can you tell a trend? I should have knitted it much more neutrals than I have, but I'm always attracted to colours. What else is there to say about it? Yeah, so I've worn it loads in the home office. I often actually have this on top of pyjamas. Because of the wide neckline, it's just so comfy to just sit in. It doesn't get like pulled up and choke you, which I find a lot of sweaters can do. And because it's on such thick needles, it has similarly like a uneven, shall we say, or like a changing in frequency raglan, but I do think this is a lot more appropriate if you are a new knitter. I know Nina has been developing one in ribbing instead with a roll neck, and I would 100% knit that because I think it'd be brilliant for dog walks. And we now hit that point that I deliberately put all my knits in a different pile, and we're now moving into pile number 2. And that's because, as I said, near this around the time we picked up Fela, who's looking at me attentively, lying with her little frog legs on the bed. And after we picked up Fela, I have spoken a bit about it, but it just took up all of my time, didn't it, Fela? And I actually didn't knit very much in August. For the first few weeks, I think I knit about 2 rows, and I only really picked it up again starting in September. Yeah, when we first got her, I was just too tired. Like, Fela wasn't a great puppy for sleep, and lots of people forget this, but when you first get puppies, they can't actually hold their bladder throughout the night, so you are forced to get up every 2 to 3 hours, and for Fela that period just lasted longer than most, and even then she was quite an unsettled puppy, so I was just exhausted. I spent most of August like in a haze of not having very much, oh excuse me, choked on my own spit, having very much sleep. Then when I finally got the desire to knit again, I think obviously you could see that at this point of time I had now done 4 test knits, and I feel like after those 4 test knits I needed to, you know, when I picked up my needles again, I felt much more of a desire to be like a monogamous knitter. I no longer wanted to have too strong a pressure because I was so pressured by everything else. So when I finally had time to knit, I wanted it to be relaxing. So the next finished object is this sweater that I have been neatly and nicely waving about. So let me pop that on for you. This is the fern sweater, and this is a knitting for olive pattern. This I actually cast on, I'm not even sure when, but I knitted on this for ages. It was kind of like a project that for a while I knitted on in between all the other projects, and so it didn't have all that much attention. And then once I finished all the test knits and I picked up my needles again, I basically decided to get this finished. I knit this in original yarn, which is knitting for olives, merino and soft silk mohair, in the colour Claret. This is one of my favourite colours. I love red, which for me is neutral enough that I never struggle to find outfits that this goes with for some reason. It just fits right into my wardrobe. But yes, I finished this in September, but like, just to say, I definitely did not start this in September. And by the time I started it, I think I'd almost finished one sleeve or something like that. So, you know, the hard bit of splitting for sleeves had already been done. And yeah, I knit it in a 2XL. Positivities on this pretty alright, I think. This pattern is like, because it's around circular yoke, I think positivities is like less obvious than this. And oh yeah, the original pattern didn't have a folded down neckline, but I added that because I just knew a roll neck in this would just be way too itchy for me. So this is another, well, this is my first all over lace piece, and I really enjoyed it. I didn't find it cumbersome at all, really. This was because I got to return to it when I was ready to finish it. This actually remained quite an enjoyable knit, and another pattern that I could see myself knit again. Then we hit the next sweater. So at this point I was picking up, after we got Fela, not only did I take a break from knitting, but I also kind of stepped off the social media scene for a little while. I would share like glimpses of Fela and like scroll a little bit, but I wasn't in that knitting zone as much. And then once I got started on fern, it just all began for me. And so my next project is this heavy sweater. This is actually quite a big heavy sweater. It's probably felted a little bit in the washing machine. Yeah, so I've spoken about this at length on the podcast, so I won't say too much about the felting, but anyway, this is the Nordstrom sweater by Kalana. This so let me start that over. This is the Kalana Nordstrom, which is designed by Henry Raymond, but it's a free pattern that you can download from Kalana's website because it's designed in their yarns, and that is also what I've knitted it in. So I've knitted it in one strand of Kalana Alva and one strand of Peruvian Highland wool. The base is in the marzipan colour, both in the Alva and in the Peruvian Highland wool, and the contrast colour is the Peruvian Highland wool in Merlot, which is one of their melange colours like marzipan, and the Alva is maroon, burgundy, something like that, some kind of reddish colour. I had the marzipan, the Peruvian Highland wool marzipan, I had literally stockpiled because it was so hard to get hold of for a while. So when Simona from Knit had it in stock, I like bought a sweater quantity without knowing what it was going to become, and that was all I had in my stash. And then when I was to knit it, I picked the contrast colour, and I just knew that dark red was right up my street. Just got a possessive pull from my puppy. She's saying, "Mummy, I am herding you into bed. Won't be long." And yes, I picked this like dark red contrast colour, which the Alva for this and the Peruvian Highland wools in the Merlot colour was actually kindly gifted by Simona as a welcome back to knitting. As I said, I ever so slightly felted this, which I think is a bit of a shame. I think now I know what I think I did wrong, which is when I washed it, I always do spin and drain in the washing machine because TESTKNIT does it, and I'm like, if TESTKNIT can do it to all the mini sweaters that she has made in her lifetime, I will probably be fine. But I think my RPMs were too low, so actually the sweater gets thrown around less the higher the RPMs, so actually having it lower might felt it more. And I think that's what happened because it didn't happen to my gauge swatch, but I'm not sure. At first I was gutted because it was my first ever colour work piece, and I was like, I can't believe I've spent all of this time knitting this big pattern or all of this colour work. But actually I've worn it loads for dog walks. The roll neck is perfect when it is freezing. I have discovered that personally my preference when I take Phil on walks is actually to wear a waterproof jacket that isn't like for winter time, even now that it's been really cold, and then yeah, to wear a rain jacket and then a warm sweater underneath. I find that that's much better for temperature regulation, because like a proper winter jacket is perfect for the very like cold part of the walk. So if we're doing like a really like, sometimes we do like a walk around the estate where we literally spend, you know, 40 minutes walking a kilometre, I will wear a thick jacket for that. But for like our like proper walks, I find that's much better. And this is really good because when it's really windy, you don't have the roll neck to keep you warm. Right, we're also almost at the end now, so I might see if I feel like I'm here myself chewing a stick. The next project that I finished were test knits for Laura. So they are the school run hats that I will pop in pictures of, because the toddler one that I did for Gage I've given away, and the small adult size is downstairs, and I didn't want to disturb the dog, which was clearly I may as well have done because she disturbed me anyway. It probably also has mud on it because I wear that when I go for dog walks. Really enjoyed it, really enjoyable knit, really quick knit, perfect for gifts, as you'll see later. I knitted the toddler one in just Maxi VIP in leftovers from my Wednesday sweater, and the small adult size I had leftovers in white Maxi VIP, which I then held with some hand dyed mohair from King Fibre. I don't find that kind of mohair itchy, so all good for me. I finished both of those in November. The Nordstrom I finished in October. At the same time, I also test knitted the School Run Headband from Laura from Penrose Knits, which I knitted in, again, small adult in Peruvian Highland wool in the masterpan colour, which was left over from the Nordstrom sweater. I can't remember how much I used, not very much. And I no longer have that because when my auntie saw it when I was back home, she was immediately desperate to have it. Right, are you going to behave yourself? Come on then. Come on then. Right, let's see if the dog will behave now. And she was just like, oh, wow, it's so pretty. And, oh, this is so nice, Caroline. And I was like, you can have it. And her whole face, like, no, she's like, what, really? Like, you really don't have to. Like, it's fine. Like, I don't blah, blah, blah. And I was like, just you keep it and enjoy it. And I think that was a good choice because the masterpan colour on my golden hair didn't clash, but it also didn't complement my hair. But my auntie has dark brown hair, and on her it just had the perfect colour. I actually never measured gauge on it, so I can't be sure if I still met gauge after I knit it, but the small adult was perfectly small, so both me and my auntie are borderline children sizes, my auntie even more so, so if it fits her, small adult is actually truly small. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, and the good thing about Peruvian, I didn't actually speak about that when I wore it. I'm not sure what has happened because I have quite severe pilling on this, like underneath the sleeves and stuff. So the Nordstrom is definitely, oh wow, you can really see it done by the ribbing, it's all full of bubbles of ribbing. You can probably also now hear Fela chewing her safe for dog wood stick. Anyway, but the headband never felt it funny, even though I probably also spun that in the washing machine and it didn't pill significantly. I don't find Peruvian Highland wool itchy at all. So reaching the end, let's get these final ones out of the way. We're now reaching December and we're now hitting peak knitting time. I was really getting in the groove, my speed was coming back up, Fela was being less of a troll, though still a troll. And my next big finish is this. This one I also had yarn gifted for, and you're going to have to live with it on top of my jeans because I feel like it's unnecessary to take them off to show you. This is the easy evening dress that I test knitted for Easiest Knit. I knitted it in an XL in Drops Nepal, again sponsored, in the colour medium grey, and I finished this in December. And I have shown, we're obviously reaching the knits you will just have seen in the podcast, and oh, I love this, so soft. I am starting to see it's a slightly cheaper yarn, and it's a very soft yarn, so you can probably see we're starting to get some pilling, but I can live with that. This is now it blocked, and you can see it's slightly looser. Based on what I see in some of the smaller sizes, I feel like I could probably have knitted even a size down and still had quite a lovely fit. But yeah, would recommend. This took me, God, how long did it end up taking? Less than 3 weeks, I think, to knit a whole sweater. Oh yeah, I'm just gonna hold this up so you can see the pilling. Do you see that down the front here? It's a funny place to have pilling, isn't it? But yeah, I've worn this loads, and this is actually quite good for dog walks as well, because I wear this, I wear the dress, and then I wear wellies, and then there's only really your legs that are out and you're still quite warm with the roll neck. And then my next finish was a chunky baby wrap, which was designed by TESTKNIT, which I knitted in the bigger size, but I wasn't completely on gauge, so it actually turned out a little bit bigger. I used double soft merino from Knitting for Olive. It was the leftover yarn for my Augustines test, and this was another sort of stash buster. I really got into that here at the end of the year and into the start of this year. And yeah, I finished that in December and gifted it to my aunties, to my auntie and my cousin. My auntie has a baby, you know what I mean. So yeah, that was a lovely quick knit. Then I knitted basic Venta for from Sharon's in the small medium size. I used the MOME chunky, and I gifted them to my granny. If you didn't know, the MOME Sandermann yarn was from her hometown, and I thought it would be lovely for her to have some of that yarn from where she grew up. So I finished those in December, just before flying back home, flying back to Scotland from Denmark, and I gave them to my granny. And now we're starting to hit the final bits. I think I've messed up the order on the iPad, because I'm fairly certain that the next thing I finished was a school run hat for Ben that I knitted in Knitting for Olive's double soft merino. So it's again a school run hat, but without the peacock edge. I just folded it and sewed it down when I was done, but followed the medium size because I knew I'd be a little bit off gauge, and it's a little bit too big, so it needs tumble dried. But yeah, it's just in double soft merino. It's just a basic boring double brimmed hat, nothing particularly interesting. And now we're hitting the final test knit of the year. That is a project that I finished. I'd actually taken it with me to Denmark, but I didn't have time to fully finish it when I was back home, and I haven't actually shown this on a podcast yet, because it ended up being on hold for a while. I need to measure all of this up and get it sent over to Lissy. This is the first sweater, which is designed by my lovely friend Lissy from Home Knits. I will link both her and Laura from Penrose Knits YouTube channels down below if you've never watched them. They're brilliant, much better than me, so definitely take a look at those. I knitted this in a size 6, and I used Kalana, Veta and Dahlia in the colour Red Squirrel, and this was yarn I'd had in my stash for over a year, so I'm really glad that it's out of my stash now. This is a sweater knitted top down with raglan increases, and the sleeves are knit in half fisherman's rib, which is these beautiful big balloony sleeves. And I think some of the feedback I will give is that in my size that I've knitted the body to measurements, it's a tiny bit on the shorter side, I would say. I do think you could add a little bit more. It does gape a little bit here in the back for me again, so I might have to double check that I have met gauge, because I do think it looks a bit bigger. I haven't aggressively blocked the body because I really aggressively blocked the sleeve. Half fisherman's rib is obviously a rib, meaning there's loads of stretch to it, and I wanted them to be as long as possible. So I wanted to see what would happen if I just completely pulled them out. And I can see just looking down at them that wearing it one full day. I have had a bit of spring back, but this is, to me, perfect length. And I finished this just at the tail end. Wanted to finish all my knits, and that is the final knits this year. So I think what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to move you and then we're going to sit down and sum up this year. But I thought I'd just sit down and finish like summing up what this year was like. So first of all, should we have a sip of wine? That was a lot of outfit changes. I would say when I think back to 2021, it was a big year in my life. Obviously, in a lot of ways thanks to her, but also because it was the year that obviously I have been doing the podcast through all of 2021, so you can go back and enjoy all of those, and in all of those I give personal updates. But I think on a personal front, buying the house was massive. Moving out of the flat that we lived in before was just so needed. But it's also been a hard year. I didn't see any of my family until November, when it had been over a year since I'd seen them, and seeing them in December was lovely. But I do think a lot of this year, if you're like, wow, that's so many projects, I think it's fair to say that this year knitting failure. Could we for this serious part maybe not chew the stick? But I think it's fair to say that this year knitting was a form of escapism for me, or like in 2021 it really truly was. Yeah, that 2021 really was, I needed knitting to escape from what was some harsh realities in my life in some way. I know lots of people have it harder than me, this is not to complain, but just to be honest, my mental health really suffered, and my body image really suffered at several points this year. The fact that I have lost weight is actually because I finally started thinking about my eating habits in a good way, not to like have good or bad eating groups, but just to have like nutritious food that makes me happy and makes me feel good. This year was really the year where I went from being a beginner that evolved into advanced beginner quite quickly, to really feeling like that there's lots of patterns that I can tackle. There's lots of techniques that I have mastered this year. That means that I'm less scared of trying new patterns. With all skills, you know, something like lace knitting or colour work and all of these things, obviously within that there's, you know, I no longer consider myself a beginner in knitting, but I, for example, consider myself a beginner when it comes to colour work, because I haven't done all that much. But I feel like I'm starting 2022 feeling like there's no knits that I want to knit that I don't think I can knit, and that's how I started 2021. I'm so glad that I have mastered many of those techniques that makes everything easier. Is it time to go, Fela? I don't know if you can tell, but when she gets excited, what's this, Fela? She makes this little lip. You make a squiff, don't you? Like a little lips get like stuck in her teeth. She looks like a doofus, don't you? A very cute one. This has been plenty long anyway. Thank you so much for sticking with me. Thank you for sticking through Wine Caroline, who is definitely her own character. And hopefully I'll see you very soon to talk you through properly knits. All the knits I've done in the past week, well, including this beautiful sweater, which I'm so excited to talk more about. So thank you so much. And I can't wait to see you more in 2022. Bye!